What we do know about the Brandon Aiyuk situation is that he has requested a trade, but what we're still trying to discern is why he requested a trade. Well, Mike Garafolo, the guy who originally announced the trade request via Brandon Aiyuk, went on NFL Network to talk in more detail about why this is actually occurring and where the breakdown is happening. So we actually get some more, I guess, finer details regarding where the kind of issue lies, where the gap is between Brandon Aiyuk and the San Francisco 49ers front office. So let's take a listen to what Mike Garafolo has to say about where the impasse is that has ultimately led to Brandon Aiyuk requesting a trade. Take a listen right here.
Tom, we talked about this all offseason, and there had been talk about him requesting a trade, and I made it clear at every stop along the way. There was no formal trade request from Brandon Aiyuk. Now, was he aware that other teams would be interested in trading for him if the 49ers actually opened the gates and let it happen? Yes. Was he stoking the fire by talking to his buddy Jaden Daniels on FaceTime and then putting it on his social media? Yes. But there was no official trade request until today. And the reason for it, from my understanding, is the 49ers did make a run at an extension for Aiyuk, but it was below what some of these other guys have been getting. And I'm not even talking about the Justin Jeffersons. I'm talking about the Jalen Waddles, the Devontae Smiths. And Aiyuk wanted to at least be in line with them. It was not in line with them. And this was back a couple of months ago. Now, you remember there was a recent conversation between the sides in which I'm told both sides got some things off of their chest to perhaps reset the table for another run at negotiations. Well, that didn't happen, and the Niners haven't made an offer, from my understanding, according to sources, until since May, And so Aiyuk at this point, with training camp about to start, feeling frustrated, says, you know what? I want to trade then. We had plenty of time to get something done. We're not getting it done. So here we are. Formally, a trade request from Brandon Aiyuk. We shall see if the Niners honor that. Like you mentioned, they've had these situations before and felt like they've been able to manage them to the point of getting something done in the end.
So it appears that it's been some time since the San Francisco 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk have actually met at the negotiating table and talked about this. Maybe that's partly due to why we have seen some of the social media antics by Brandon Aiyuk since the NFL draft is maybe it's just been quiet. Maybe he's been a little antsy. And since that time where the last deal was presented to them, which again is from our knowledge, which is in the range of, I believe, $26 million per year on average. And again, that's not representative of the guaranteed money. It's just kind of the high end overview kind of structure of the particular deal that was presented. So, what I guess they haven't been talking. And so over that time period, I guess Brandon Aiyuk and his representation have grown increasingly frustrated by maybe the lack of communication. And it appears that where Brandon Aiyuk is trying to get doesn't match other wide receivers within his relative skill set. So I think a lot of us have been looking at the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal where he's at, I believe, 30 million per year on average. I do think it's important to note in the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal, that final year of the deal is kind of a bogus year. And it's one of the things that I've learned speaking to someone who actually cuts these deals with players and kind of was able to provide insight into, yes, we look at the average per year, but it's really easy to inflate that. And a lot of these deals have these bogus years at the end of it that are super inflated. Tyreek Hill is the perfect example of that, where it changes the overall look of the deal. And so when it's reported, you hear, oh, Tyreek Hill, highest paid wide receiver, 30 million per year on average, when in reality, you look at it, the guaranteed money isn't necessarily aligned, and there's kind of a void year and a bogus year kind of put onto the back of it. So I learned that, and I learned that about Amon-Ra's deal. And so it appears that's been kind of the target of where Brandon Aiyuk's trying to get. But it sounds like he and the 49ers aren't even able to reach the Jalen Waddle territory or the Devonta Smith territory. Devonta Smith signed, I believe, at 25 million per year on average before the draft. Jalen Waddle surprised a lot of people with getting over $70 million in guaranteed money. And I think that kind of changed the trajectory of what Brandon Aiyuk was looking for. We said it a million times on this channel, right? As the negotiations have progressed, is that yesterday's price is not today's price. And that couldn't be any truer of this situation, is that every day that this went on, it felt like the price just kept going up and up and up because other wide receivers were getting paid. And as we know, the market is what dictates what these guys get. The next guy, the last guy, dictate what the next guy is going to get. So, understanding all of that, understanding with kind of where what we're hearing is where the gap is that my assumption is that this gap would have been bridged by this point. I was kind of aware of this gap. It's very in line with the things that I've been hearing behind the scenes of where they were last at in regards to a potential contract getting done. And it just felt like the gap needed to be bridged. And apparently that hasn't happened. And instead, ahead of training camp, we now have a trade request from Brandon Aiyuk. And again, we've talked about this and what this means. Doesn't mean Brandon Aiyuk's going to get traded. No, it doesn't necessarily mean that. We've had multiple players request trades and stick around. Raheem Mostert, Robbie Gould, Deebo Samuel, just to name a few. And again, it's just all about coming to an agreement at the end of the day. The player getting what they feel they best deserve, the organization feel like they're getting their best value, and those two things coming together so the deal could get done and we can move on. So we've got about a week, a little bit more than a week until the first day of training camp actually kicks off. So we shall see what comes of this. But yeah, it's a tricky situation, and there's definitely more that we have to see play out before we even know what's gonna happen. So yeah, interesting times right ahead of training camp. So hopefully this is something that both sides can come to an agreement on, get them into camp, and we can move forward from this situation. But it does feel like there is an opportunity for it to take a turn. We just hope it doesn't get to that point, even though the trade request might be an indication of that. We'll see. Let me know what you thought about what Mike Garafolo talked about with this issue. Let me know where you feel. Where do you stand on the Brandon Aiyuk situation? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.